Some of you were in the panel discussion that I was just on. Some interesting points made about the uranium market. I don't need to go over the uranium market. Not sure if our presentation's up here or not. Western Uranium is a U.S., all of our resources are in the U.S. We've got 7 mines that are permitted and ready to go into production. We're simply waiting for a little bit higher uranium price. The other thing about Western, we also have a significant amount of vanadium in the mines with the uranium content. So if you're going to be in the uranium industry these days, either you're going to have a big resource or you're going to have low-cost production. Western Uranium has both a fairly large resource but low-cost production. We believe that we can compete with anybody in the world for 2 reasons. One is the vanadium credit. And vanadium now is selling for over $11 a pound. And the Sunday Mine Complex is one of the first mines that will come on production. That one has 6 times the content of uranium or vanadium that it does uranium. And so with that credit that we recover, it reduces the costs that we have to allocate to the uranium production. I'm trying to figure out if I can turn this thing. I'm not sure how you do it. Advance it. But anyway, keep going without advancing the slide. It doesn't seem to work. Our projects are all located in the western United States region, Utah and Colorado right now.
You should have a clicker somewhere, unless the last person stole it.
Oh, is this it?
That would be the one, yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
There. Okay, now we're under control here. Our statement, of course, that everybody has to make, you can read that later, it doesn't mean a lot. But anyway, our whole strategy is when the uranium prices reach a certain level, put these mines back into production. The Sunday Mine Complex was actually operated in 2009 by Denison Mines, and we bought this mine a couple of years ago. The key is we're not actually exploring. I can buy resources far cheaper than I can explore for them. So at this point, we're spending nothing on exploration. We buy resources very inexpensively and hold those resources until the price of uranium justifies production. As we all have heard, from the other companies here, everybody expects the price of uranium to come up, whether it's this year or next year or a couple of years. The world cannot produce the uranium needed at the current prices. So we're going to have a recovery of the uranium price at some point. And so the companies, there are various companies that will profit from that. One is to actually produce and turn that uranium resource into cash. And that's our whole goal, is to be a low-cost producer in the near term. Just our location of our properties, we've got producing mines or past producing mines in Colorado and Utah. We are close to the White Mesa Mill, which is owned by Energy Fuels. That we'll be able to initially mill our product there, but we also have the rights to build the only fully permitted uranium mill in the United States. And that's called the Pinyon Ridge Mill, and it's hard to see it on this map, but it's located in far western Colorado. I bought that from Energy Fuels a couple of years ago. Energy Fuels spent $13 million getting the permits for that mill. And then when they took over the White Mesa Mill from Denison, they no longer needed the Pinyon Ridge Mill. So that mill is standing there ready to build as soon as the price of uranium and vanadium justify it. The key is there's only one operating mill in the United States, and that's the White Mesa Mill. To expand production in the United States significantly, you have to build more uranium mills. And this is the only one that's licensed. I'm not saying you can't license other ones, but it's a long, expensive process to get licenses for uranium mills. Not so much for uranium mines, but anytime you have to go through the process of licensing a milling facility, it just costs a lot and takes a lot of time. Pictures of the Sunday Mine Complex, ready to go into operation. Very low operating cost, but also almost zero cap cost. It's already there. It's been fully developed. Could turn this mine on for less than $100,000. Half of that is to turn on the electricity. The meters there, you have to pay a deposit. Very low cap cost if we do it with a contractor, and that's how Denison was operating. They had a contractor in there, so they didn't have to buy the mine equipment. They didn't have to put into that capital cost. We will use a contractor to mine the mine when we start, so we don't have any capital cost to buy all the underground mining equipment. The key to the low-cost production from these type of deposits is a technology that was developed in the last 6 or 7 years by some scientists in Casper, Wyoming. And what this process does is it uses kinetic energy. It uses a mechanical process to upgrade the uranium. There's been upgrading uranium facilities, use ore sorters, things like that, in the past. This is a technology that basically, with a sandstone type of deposit, which basically the uranium or vanadium or whatever other mineral is coating the sand grain, and the key is to take it away from that sand grain and upgrade it. Well, this does it by driving those sand grains against each other at very high velocity, and the collision of the sand grain releases the coating. And I thought I had a slide that showed the ultimate results, but I guess I don't. If you come by our booth, we've got that, booth 717. But what happens is the product that comes out of the ablation process is a clean sand, almost like beach sand, and you just leave that product back at the mine. So what it does, it reduces the mass of material that you have to transport to the mill and mill it. And in the United States and probably around the world, of the three components of producing uranium, you got to mine it, and then you got to ship it to a mill, unless the mill's right at the mine site, and then you got to mill it. Well, the milling cost is the most expensive of those three. So we don't reduce the mining cost, we still have to mine it, and we put it through this very low-cost process, and then we reduce the mass of the material that we ship to the mill by up to 90%. So the reduction in the trucking cost and the milling cost is where we get our reduction in overall production cost. Another picture of the mine. Oops, going the wrong way. And of course, our production strategy, the prices of uranium, and the key is already the vanadium content in these mines is worth more than the uranium. But the problem with selling vanadium, right now you cannot get a long-term contract. So if I could lock in $11 for a couple years, you could justify starting this mine on today's uranium price. But the vanadium buyers are used to buying it in the short term, contracting and buying it as that price goes up and down, much like copper or the other commodities. They do not want to contract at a long-term price at, say, $11. It might fall. Who knows? The supply demand will drive the price. But until the vanadium buyers step up and say they'll do a 2 or 3 year contract, we can't start the mine based on speculation of the vanadium price. Now, unlike that, uranium, we have a long-term contract, but we need more uranium contracts at higher prices to justify starting the mines. So that's the key, is having the utilities come back into the market and contracting for long-term uranium supplies at a reasonable price. And in this case, it doesn't have to go up substantially for the Sunday mine to start and be economical. So that's the story of our company. We're listed both on the CSE, the Canadian Stock Exchange, as the OTCQX in the US. We have about 20 million shares outstanding, a pretty limited number of shares. I own about 25% of the company. A couple of the other shareholders, we've got very closely held shares. One of the things, we don't trade a lot of shares simply because there's so much of it closely held. That may be good, it may be bad. That's kind of the story of Western. I appreciate you attending the session here. Thank you.